Welcome to the Brantford Camera Club monthly meeting. Tonight's program is Van Dyke Brown Photography by Steve Golder. In tonight's meeting, he will include a bit of history about the process itself, a description of how he came to be interested in making print images using the Van Dyke technique, and details showing of the individual steps involved in making these one-of-a-kind prints. Now here is Steve with the program.
Steve Golder is here, made the special trip to be with us tonight, is here in the state on business down in Ocala, I think he said, that came all the way from Ocala to share with us about this. How many of you have ever even heard of Van Dyke photographic processes? Only a few of us have even heard about it, but it's been around, as he'll explain, for a long, long time. One of the early on processes that is marvelous, and we look forward to learning about it. Steve, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you. Pleasure to be here, and hope we can share some of this with you and have some fun with it. I'm going to tell you bits and pieces about my photographic history as we go through this. But I'd kind of like to get a feel for where y'all are with this. How many analog film people are in the room?
Ever or now?
Now. How many before? Okay, good. How many digital photographers have we got in the room? How many phone photographers have we got in the room? Yeah, okay. Well, we all know the best camera is the one you're carrying with you. About 90% or more of what I photographed in the last 5 years is on this phone. I'm kind of ashamed to admit it, but the reality of it is a lot of these images were taken with this camera in an iPhone, not with a Canon 5D like I used to shoot, or my 7D. So I've made this transition to digital a lot more quickly and a lot more further than I thought. And this came out of that because I kept thinking, you know, it was fun back in college in the darkroom to watch the image come up. It was fun to process it myself. Maybe I need to get back to that somehow, despite my addiction to this iPhone, okay? So let me show you kind of how that works. So, I'm going to start with just some of these images, okay? And of course, I didn't pay somebody to make those. I did them myself.
Wow. Where was that?
Enniskillen, Ireland.
Okay.
That was taken with the Canon 7D. But anyway, what is a Van Dyke? I'm not going to go into a lot of technical details, but it came about at the end of the last century as a response to the blue tone of a cyanotype picture that they were producing at the time. And basically, you get an iron salt and you make a photosensitive fluid that reacts to UV light. And ferric ammonium citrate and silver nitrate are the basis. And who invented this? Nobody knows. It's named Van Dyke because the brownish hues that it gives were reminiscent of this painter from the 17th century whose images were that way. Now, my path into this actually started with David Michael Kennedy. Now, some of you who are my age will instantly recognize his pictures. He was in the recording industry photography side. He made all kinds of pictures of people like Bruce Springsteen, Muddy Waters, Willie Nelson, Debbie, what's her name? Anyway, we were out in New Mexico and we saw this sign for his studio. And we went back in there and he met us. And this is in a little town, El Rito. It's probably no bigger than Brantford, maybe smaller. You can throw a rock across it. And we went and we pulled in, and there was this adobe house that he lived in and a big courtyard, and the guy said, oh, go on in there, he'll be in there. Well, we went into this gallery and his dark room that looked like it had been dropped out of the sky from Canyon Road in Santa Fe. It was beautiful. All his big, huge images are up, and he did platinum palladium printing. And he had a workshop. Anybody interested, I brought 3 little pieces of paper if you want to look it up and go do this. But I signed up to go spend a week with him all by myself. And he takes you and he teaches you how to do this. And it was a transformative experience. Okay, I was going to do this when I got home. Well, I couldn't really, because I didn't have the equipment to make the darkroom, but there's a couple of his images. Okay, and when he moved to El Rito, he started doing Indian photography and Southwest landscape photography, and that's what he does now. But he's got a whole library of people like Willie and all these people that he met and trained and photographed. Anyway, so now I'm going to kind of walk you through the process. That's how I got there, and I wanted to learn how to do this. What happened was the platinum palladium got really expensive because of the cost of the platinum, and I was worried about doing a dark room and the vents and the hoods and all of this stuff. And I thought, oh my God, there's got to be a simpler way. And I found this place called Bostic and Sullivan where they sold these Van Dyke Brown kits. And it's the same process. You basically take this emulsion, paint it on the paper, make a contact negative, put it down on it, and expose it to UV light. And you do it in your own bathroom if you want to, you know. So it's not that hard. You gotta have some Photoshop skills because you got to create your negative. Starting with a good positive, you gotta figure out what you want, get it all fixed and optimized in Photoshop. Then you make a negative for it, and then you flip it because you're gonna lay this thing down on a piece of paper and you don't want it to be backwards. So then you gotta print it, so you need a decent printer. Most of them recommend using an Epson printer with good photographic inks. And then you basically pick out your size with your negative and you line out the piece of paper, draw it on there so you know where you're going to put your picture down. Then in the middle of that little square that you've drawn on the picture, you take the emulsion. You gotta have some droppers and things, and you know, you put your emulsion in my case, a shot glass, and you just smear it on there, and then you paint it. And you want to get a nice, clean, easy feeling for how to fill that paper. That does take a little while to learn, and you know, you got to be careful with the paper out here. You don't want to drop emulsion on there because once it's there, it's there. It's, you know, it messes up your paper. And one of the things, oh yeah, the other thing is as you're painting, you know, you've got to clear your brush sometimes. So this is a little aside, but I always keep a piece of paper that I can use for a print to clear the brush on. And when you do that, you can get some interesting images.
That is neat.
So that's kind of a twofer. Okay? And people like those. They're very different. So this is the actual print, of course, and then that one's just my doodlings. So that's kind of fun. So anyway, then one of the things that makes this exciting too is that this becomes a one-of-a-kind piece. This is not something that somebody's going to run off 50 copies of and sell. This is yours. You made it yourself. And in some ways, that little border, and this was the case for years for platinum palladium printing, that little border was the tip-off that this is an original piece. And so in a lot of these images you will see here, I went to great lengths to try to come up with a really cool looking border, and you play with brushes and all of this stuff, and that's part of the creative process. So you make that border, and then you gotta stick that in a light-proof place to dry. In my case, I had a cabinet in the closet, and so I put that piece of paper, one of those cloth things, across the top of it, and just put them on some wire racks on a shelf in there and let them dry. And they'll stay there for 2 or 3 days, maybe even a couple weeks. I haven't really tested how long you can leave them. They tell you to process them pretty quickly. It takes them about an hour or 2 to dry, and then you can put your negative down on it. Okay, so then you're gonna take your negative and you're gonna put it there and line it up. And then you're gonna put it in this thing, in my case, or in any case really. So this is a light box, okay? It's got nice clean glass in the front, but you can take the back off, okay? And you put your print in the middle right here so that it goes on either side, okay? And then once you got the, and this is supposed to push that thing down so it doesn't roll, you know, it gives a nice even texture to it. So then I just throw this on top of it, and just for good measure, keep it out of the light, put that on it, and then I let the light go down and take it outside. And that's kind of the way you do it. Now you can buy a UV light machine that's a couple of $1,000. Makes it a little easier because you don't have to worry about the clouds and the rain and the UV light intensity. But to me, that's part of the fun of it, is trying to learn how to do this with that. So there it goes in there, and then we cover it. I just showed you that. So there I am outside with my digital timer. And I used to try to keep track of lighting conditions, and I made test strips and everything, but the problem is it's hard to control that. And the UV index changes during the course of the day. You gotta wait for a hot spot or it's on the rise up, you know, it's just hard. And so after a lot of trial and error, making test strip after test strip after test strip, by the time, oh, the other thing is it takes a while to process this test strip, right? I mean, you've got to put it through the washes, and then you've got to let it dry, and then it changes as you go through it. So by the time you get the test strip done, your light's gone. Well, this is hard-won knowledge. But at some point I thought, you know, there's got to be a better way. Oh, the other thing is, in this little series here is one of the little pictures I did, and you can, like in the old darkroom, you can dodge and burn these things. You know, if you get an exposure that isn't quite right, for example, this one is a minute, it's underexposed, trial and error. 3 minutes, it's overexposed. And so this one, I got frustrated. I exposed the clouds for 2 minutes and 20 seconds, and the darker part for 1 minute and 45 seconds using this little thing. So you can literally do old school darkroom stuff in your front yard with this. Now the light, you notice that there's a light on when I'm in there, and you don't want fluorescent light. You got to be out of the sunlight, but an incandescent light is okay. So you can do a lot of this, unlike a dark room with a red light. You can do it in just normal lighting, so you can see what you're doing. And then I decided that what I needed to do was pay attention to the way that border looked. can see. So here we are, 1 minute, or the start of the exposure. Notice the border is kind of a yellowish color. At 1 minute, it's just starting to darken. 2 minutes, getting a little better. 3 minutes, now it's getting kind of serious. So I thought, around 3.5 minutes, I'm gonna go have a look. So I put the covers on, took the thing inside, literally stopped the exposure at 3 minutes, took it into a darkened bedroom and got out my little flashlight, opened half of the thing and looked at it. And you can see that there's some detail in there. It's looking pretty good, but it looked a little light, and this is where you just have to practice and get some idea of what's gonna happen, because that thing is gonna darken instantly when you put it in the water to wash it after you've exposed it. Then you're gonna put it in some palladium toner and some fixative and stuff, and then when you dry it ultimately, it's gonna darken. So you just have to kind of play with that and figure out how to do it. So anyway, when I did that, I let it go another 30 seconds. I have no idea why right now, but I did. And so then I stopped it. And when you took it inside, here it is in the light box, and then that other one is pulled out of the light box. This one has the negative still on it, and the negative's been removed in that one. And then you're gonna put it in some baths, you know. And it starts out just with tap water. And then you put it in a palladium toner for 3 to 5 minutes, and then 5 minutes in another water rinse, and then in a hypo for 6 minutes. Then you put it in a running water bath for like half an hour. So I just commandeered my son's bathtub and put one of these big trays in there and just put a little thing that made it so it dripped down, and you know, you just leave it in there and let it go. Then you got to hang it up and dry it. So here's an undeveloped image with and without the negative. I just showed you that. And here's what happens when it goes into the water. See how yellow it is? Drop it in the water, boom, instantly brown. You've got to wash that, you've got to shake that tray, because the emulsion that has not actually been fully exposed starts to just leach out of the picture. And you can end up with black clouds on your image, on your borders, where you don't want them unless you wash that stuff off. So you got to move, it's in there for 5 minutes, you got to move it the whole time. So, you know, this is a time-consuming process, because you got to do that when you put it in the water, you got to do it in the toner, you got to do it in the next water, you got to do it in the hypo. The only break you get is when you put it in the running water bath. But by then, hopefully, you're starting on another image. And so somebody asked earlier, well, you know, how many of these can you do? How long does it take? Well, as you can see, it takes a good 40 minutes probably to start to finish to get one image done. So I set up all these baths and stuff, and I try to get 3 or 4 images done, but as my wife will tell you,
I think 4 is the
gone.
record.
I'm gone for the day. Well, and you've got your window of the UV light too. You know, I mean, you know, 2, 3 o'clock, boom, you're done. You know, so, but that's part of the joy and the challenge of it to me. Oops. So there it is in the palladium toner bath, and there it is rinsing. It doesn't really change too much at that point. And then it's in the fixative, and then the final water bath. And then see how it's darkened when you hang it to dry? It really changes. And then when you've got one you like, you want to kind of preserve it on the paper, so you wax it. And then David Michael Kennedy's Platinum Palladium prints, he actually has a whole thing of watercolors there. And he will spot check. You know, like if there's a little white spot, he'll do a spot check and fill it in with watercolor. And I worked on that when I was with him, and man, that really is a skill. I have not mastered that, and nor tried it with any of these. So you gotta try to get them good. But then you're gonna sign it, and then, you know, it buckles and curls, because it's paper. So Barbara's job is to iron it. And,
Do you get a percentage of his pictures when he sells
It's a
them?
very, very expensive item.
So, you know, there's the finished product.
What size is that?
That's, I think, an 8x10
8 by 10.
print on an 11x14 piece of paper. And that's another thing that you can kind of box yourself in. I mean, David Michael Kennedy makes prints like this, like Clyde Butcher. You know, I can't do anything bigger than 11x14 because I got that light box. You know, and I'm not sure I want to. So by the time you start chalking up the cost of the chemicals and all of this, it's just, ooh. And the market for those bigger prints, if you're trying to sell them, is probably not all that good unless you are like David Michael Kennedy and have a name. Then people will pay anything for them. The other funny little story I want to tell you about him is we've gotten to be very good friends, and every time we go out there, we visit him. And he had an exhibit in one of the galleries in Santa Fe. Was it the Art Museum?
No, was it the one up on Canyon Road, like Images or something?
No, that's the gallery he's in, but that museum thing we went to him with.
Oh, yeah, that's in the art museum.
In an art museum, they put together a collection of his images along with 3 other New Mexico photographers. And we went to this with him, which was really fun, and he showed us around his images and stuff, and we were talking about it one day, and he said, you know, I'm getting away from doing those stupid borders. I said, well, why? What's the matter with that? He says, well, I was in a gallery and people were looking, this couple were looking at my images. And the woman said, oh, wow, I really like that. Look at those borders. Boy, I love those borders. And David thought, well, what about the picture? But what really got him was the husband or the boyfriend said, oh, don't worry about those. I can put those on for you in Photoshop. No problem. Whoa, hell. So now he's not doing those big borders anymore. So I don't know what to do. You know, but here's a few more pictures. That's down on the East Coast, Pelican Island. Mary. That's in Italy, somewhere.
Or it's in Rome.
Or Rome, yeah. That's at the Monastery of the Holy Spirit in Conyers, Georgia. And that's in Ireland, again, near Classiband Castle, which some of you might have recognized as Lord Mountbatten's home when he was blown up by the IRA. Yeah. So I put in a few little weird things. I didn't know if anybody'd be interested, but that's David Michael Kennedy's website, and I highly recommend a visit to his little gallery out there if you're ever traveling around New Mexico. It's well worth the side trip. So, and he's a wonderful guy. The week I spent with him was just wonderful, just great. It was like going in a different world. And I never left the compound or the dark room for an entire week.
Wow.
Never. I mean, I'd eat dinner and have breakfast when I was back in the dark room. It was a wonderful experience. Now, this is where I got the idea for this Van Dyke Brown kit and where I get all my chemicals and stuff. And they are a wonderful resource. So you can just look up the kit. The kit comes with the chemicals everything, the instructions, how you need to mix it up, ideas about how to do it, but they're available on the phone if you have questions or need anything. So, and they have courses also on how to do this stuff.
And
So
they're
if you
in-
wanna go to Santa Fe.
Santa Fe.
Oh,
Yeah,
they're in
they're in
Santa Fe.
Santa Fe. Yeah, so if you go to Santa Fe, you can look them up. I've been by there a couple times, it's a hole in the wall, it's like nothing. But it's not a big fancy thing like David Michael Kennedy's place, but it's really interesting. So I thought you might be kind of curious as to how much money I spent putting this all together.
Oh, my.
So,
Oh, my.
It's not cheap. It's 1,500 and something bucks.
Hey, David, I think we're going to take some of your helicopter money.
But that's kind of,
It doesn't sound, look like it
What
has
it
the
means.
camera.
pardon?
Doesn't look like it has the camera.
The camera's the phone.
Oh, okay. Well, they cost something.
Yeah, well, I figured y'all got that anyway.
Yeah, I understand. I'm just pulling you
But
up.
yeah, I know, if you want to do this, my point is, you can do this with an iPhone image as well as you can with 35 millimeter. And to me, the joy of it is you kind of get back to doing something yourself, some analog, it's not all just processed. So I don't know if you want to see these, I'm gonna go through this real quick. I just took some pictures of some of this stuff. There's the printer, and those two are the two kinds of like digital negative pictures, yeah.
The one with printer saga, with the negatives and strip of tape. Printing the negatives.
Oh, yeah, that was, you know, when you get to be my age, your brain kind of forgets things. And I spent the better part of 3 days trying to sort this out, and it was such a simple thing. I wish I'd just called them, but no, I had to test everything. So I'm using this Fixins stuff right here, right? And they're written in black print that wasn't on there before this incident was, set on ultra premium photo luster. Well, I had been trying to print negatives on plain set. I don't know why I forgot to change it, but I did. And what happened was, I was trying to make these little test negatives, and there were 6 of them on the page. And the damn printer kept printing the middle 3 and leaving the other one off. And they weren't the right size. How could it be? Round and round, I tried this and that and the other thing, and tried to self-diagnose it. Finally, I gave up in frustration and called these people. What's the problem here? I even sent them pictures of my problem. They said, gosh, we never heard of that. So at the end of the day, they said, well, it might help if you put a piece of white tape on the edge, because the printer is probably sensing a blank, empty space on this translucent page. So if you give it something to key off of, it'll work. Well, that worked. But then I read the other thing they said, which was reset it. And I thought, oh, that's going to be a lot simpler than taping. And sure enough, that's all it was. So simple little things like that can trip you up, but again, this is the value of your experience.
Never forget it.
No.
Oh, yes.
So you need I clearly forgot, but you need a good paper, a decent paper cutter and a little thing to put your stuff in, and that burger is just one of the papers you can order from Bostic and Sullivan. And of course, you need a pile of these, depending on what size images you want to make. And I thought, well, I'm gonna, yes?
I had a question about when you were doing the processing. I'm assuming that has to be done without a window, in a windowless room as well?
Right.
And no UV light, right?
Right.
Okay.
I commandeered a closet behind a walk-in closet behind my daughter's bedroom. And her study's on the far door, so we've got this black stuff, curtain hanging there. And then there's a door on the front, you gotta come in and out. out, and we've got another one of those curtains there.
So you have to truly.
I try to black it all
Yeah.
out, the sunlight, you know, yeah,
You
yes,
mentioned that can't be fluorescent, what about LED lights?
that's okay.
Okay, so anything but fluorescent?
Yeah, you just don't want, there's a little bit of UV and fluorescent. Now, to be honest, I have unintentionally had that fluorescent light on, and it hasn't caused a huge problem with this process, but if you let the emulsion there for any length of time, it could cloud it, I'm pretty sure, so, yeah. And then you need tongs to lift the things out of the valve. It's just like old school darkroom, you know? And you need those things. And of course, timers are helpful because you've got 5 minutes going here and 3 minutes here. And if you're trying to do multiple pictures, what I'll sometimes do is get the thing going and then expose another one real quick while it's in a wash. And then now you've got 2 separate timers to keep track of. So anyway, that was helpful. And this is what the kit looks like. There's some sodium thiosulfate in there, and this is the solution for the thing, and this is a little bottle of palladium, and then the CTA3 to mix for the fixative. So anyway, that's kind of how you do it. And there's my really expensive dodging. And then the Dorland's wax to put on it, and a nice small pencil. You don't want some big, huge pencil doing this. I think that's it. Yeah, well, that's the end of the PowerPoint.
I hope you enjoyed the presentation. To learn more about the Branford Camera Club, please come to one of our meetings.